What is up, guys? AZ Sports Guy here, and I have a phenomenal special guest, one Edward Cole. Ed, how is it going? How you doing today?
Matthew, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you, man. Everything is good on this end. How about you?
Oh man, I'm not gonna lie. So yesterday was actually my first ever time being credentialed media, and you did something very special for me at least. Is that I was kind of out of my element. You just walked right up, introduced yourself. How's it going? Ed Cole. Made me actually feel like I belonged up there. So I appreciate you very much, man.
Absolutely. We wanted to make it the best experience possible for you to come cover your first game, Indoor Football League, Wranglers and Rattlers. I'm sure you had a great time. A double overtime football game in the first game you cover. Yeah, that's pretty special for you.
Yeah, I cannot believe it went to double overtime.
Oh,
That
goodness.
game could have been over at least three different times. Remember, there was one key moment. I think it was the end of the third quarter. I think I actually turned to Mr. Welch and said, "This is going to be the game." It was a fourth down play, and the Rattlers had a key stop on that play. And the fact that the Wranglers just did not go away. Can you just give me some context as to the identity of this team and how they don't stop battling?
And it all starts from their head coaching and from their ownership, Matthew. It comes from Mr. and Mrs. De Palma, Fred and Robin De Palma. It comes from head coach Les Moss. He comes in last season, the season before our first season, Matthew. We won one game. We went 1-14, 1-15. It was a awful first season. But then Les Moss comes in, changes the entire culture of the organization, Matthew, and then we go 15-2 and win the national championship. It was an incredible thing to do within one season to win the national championship, and now we're in year 2.5, 2.5, closer to year season 3. But it is the identity of the head coach, and it is the players that play for this football team. You saw how tough Garrett Kettle was last night, Matthew. He took shot after shot after shot from that Rattlers defense, and they are one of the best defenses, and they are relentless. They are maniacal. They are so aggressive, the Rattlers were, and they hit Garrett time after time, but he kept popping back up. It just shows the grit and the toughness that this football team has. And for them to have the number one scoring defense in the Indoor Football League says a lot as well. Jason Simpson has come in as the new defensive coordinator, replacing Rob Keefe, of course, who went to Bay Area. He's now one of the co-head coaches out in Bay Area. They're doing a great job as well. The Bay Area Panthers, they got a big win last night over Duke City. But Jason Simpson has come in, and he's got these guys that bought into that system, and they play hard. You saw how hard that defense played last night, even against Drew Powell. He's playing at an MVP type level, and Drew was on point last night. Drew and Garrett were both on point. Both of those quarterbacks accounted for 8 touchdowns for their football teams. So you've heard the phrase, of course, the football team goes as the quarterback goes. And that's what it was last night. And that's why it ended up 63-62, because of the outstanding quarterback play in every player on that football field, whether it was a Wrangler player or a Rattler player. They went for broke last night.
They both want. I think one quote, I forget which Rattlers player was walking off and said this, that they just wanted it more. Both these teams wanted it, and they wouldn't go away. And I actually find your comments very interesting on the Rattlers defense, who were just coming off of back-to-back weeks of giving up fewer than 40 points.
Mm-hmm.
The Wranglers were actually the number one defense in terms of limiting scoring, and that defense was so pesky all night. I know, at least from my perspective, Drew Powell seems to be a little off on the run game, mainly because he seems to be like he wants to be in the pocket a lot more than he usually is. But this defense was kind of suffocating. There's a couple of plays where the Rattlers looked a little silly, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's just, and it's all about adjustments, right? Drew, he like it was a few weeks ago in Phoenix when they kind of did a blitzkrieg in the first half, and the Wranglers were down 39-7 at the half, down 32 points. Garrett Kettle throws a couple interceptions, they capitalize off of it, and then you're down 32 at the half, and you're like, okay, what halftime adjustments do we do here that we're down 32 points, but the Wranglers were able to rally back, but still lost by 26. That was a tough game down in Phoenix, but Drew Powell he's unbelievable. He had 5 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns last night. Garrett Kettle, back to the quarterbacks, he had 6 touchdowns passing. He had two passing touchdowns. So it was just one of those games that somebody had to win and somebody had to lose, and it took 60 minutes plus of football to decide the winner. That was an outstanding football game last night.
And just the fact that I noticed a couple small things that don't seem quite right with Powell just being that not wanting to run as frequently, and he was still playing at the MVP level to show how good he is.
Yes.
It has to show how good that man's been playing this year. But There was one play I do want to talk about. It was after the second touchdown of the game. It's an onside kick bouncing off of Devontae Merriweather, and about 4 or 5 other Rattlers players were covered in the end zone. In your time broadcasting, have you seen a play as weird as that?
Yes, it happens all the time because Les Moss likes to roll the dice when it comes to onside kicks. He's thinking, okay, so you go down 7-0, you get 2 consecutive scores. Garrett Kettle gets a 10-yard touchdown run. Kettle throws a touchdown pass to Ramad Jockey Al Bowman. You're on a 13-0 run, right? So why not take a chance and go for an onside kick? If it works and you recover it and you go down and score, you're up potentially 20-7. And if the Rattlers turn around and go ahead and score, well, hey, it's either 14 or 13. So, you kind of roll the dice with these choices. And Les Moss he's very good at that, at rolling the dice, because he knows A, his defense is really good, and B, he trusts his quarterback Garrett Kettle because he's a rookie. He's still learning and evolving in the system and learning the indoor game of football as opposed to outdoor. It's not that much of an adjustment, really. You just basically go out there. Yes, the field's cut in half. It's instead of 100 yards, it's 50, but it's football at the end of the day, right, Matthew? You got offensive linemen blocking for you, and what you have to do is throw the football and make completions and score.
Mm-hmm. And I want to just focus in on the star player last night that was not named Drew Powell, and that's RCB. This man was everywhere. And I remember I made a sarcastic comment, like maybe the Rattlers might want to cover this guy. Apparently not.
But I'm telling you, Matthew, just watching RCB, watching Ramad last night, also Braxton Haley, he had a phenomenal game for the Rattlers, 7 for 105 and 2 touchdowns. I talked to him afterwards before they got on the buses and just kind of congratulated him on the victory. Caught up with Drew for a quick second as he was getting on the bus, congratulated him, because that's what we do, right? You still give respect to the opposing football team. They come in and beat you. They beat you fair and square. You give them respect. And we'll say, hey, we'll see you at the end of the season. We'll see you down at Footprint Center on July 15th, right? But yeah, Ramad is that's what he's been done all season long, Matthew. He's been that kind of that person that Garrett can rely on. 9 for 136 and 4 touchdowns. And like I told you, you didn't even know that he's the long snapper for extra points. He's the play. Yeah, he's the one that gets it to Garrett, and then Brandon Fisher kicks the extra points, and he covers on special teams.
He's a man of many talents.
What more can he do, Matthew? I mean, do you want to trot him out there and play defense? He could do that if he wanted to. He's big enough to play linebacker.
I was gonna say, have him be a safety. He'll tower over a couple of guys to jump over.
My gosh, but Ramad, he was so instrumental to us winning that championship last season. And when the word came out before the season that he was coming back, I was so excited because, again, I knew how important he was last season, how crucial he was to us winning a championship. He came in mid-season and he caught fire immediately with Caleb Barker and helped us win that championship. And now he's helping Garrett Kettle along as well, having that championship pedigree, helping a rookie quarterback along, and he's the perfect safety valve or the perfect number one target to go to for Garrett.
Yeah, and I want to shift just a little bit towards this rivalry. And this feels like a nice, friendly rivalry, but
no, it's not.
The Wranglers.
This is no friendly rivalry. There is no friendly rivalry in these 3 Arizona teams. Matthew, come on, stop that.
Okay, maybe I'm a little too friendly, but they get their first win against the Rattlers last season. Not only that, they also eliminate them in the playoffs, leading themselves to winning a championship. It feels like this organization is definitely, in a very brief amount of time, earned some respect. And what is the viewpoint from the Wranglers' perspective of not only wanting to beat the Rattlers, but also did it feel almost like a rite of passage, as it were, for we got to beat them because we want to be the best?
I think it was, especially that win, of course, the Western Conference Championship win that James Poovey, my broadcast partner, and I, we were there, we covered that game. That was a crazy football game for us to go to Footprint Center, win that game, going to beat Quad City for the national championship just a few weeks later. But that game up in Prescott Valley, I still remember it vividly. That had a playoff type atmosphere, even though it was a regular season game. We knew, and the entire organization knew how important that game was, because the Rattlers are the gold standard when it comes to indoor football league and organizations. They've won countless championships. So why would you not look up to a football team like that and know that if you want to get to where they are and beyond where they are, you've got to beat them. You can't just continue. You can't just lose or like in a season like this, we played them 3 times. It's well, we know that they're going to win the season series. If we go down there and win the last game, they'll be 2-1 on the season series. But the Rattlers, again, they are the team that everybody emulates because they've won championships. So if a team has that kind of pedigree, why would you not want to emulate them and try to be like them and try to eventually overtake them? And that's what we planned on last season, and we did it very well.
One thing I want to speak of, just to jump on that very well point, is I work at Mullet Arena. Finlay Toyota Center has almost the exact same setup. It's very similar atmosphere.
It is. Yes.
It
yes.
was so, I think there's 2,400 fans, so it doesn't sound very impressive. No, that building was pretty full, and it was loud the entire night. It's kind of hard to hear yourself think every now and then. Is that the normal atmosphere, or was it just heightened because you got this big old rivalry game?
It is that normal atmosphere, but of course the Rattlers do bring that kind of mystique. And of course, you saw how well the Rattlers fans traveled. They had a nice contingent of fans that came up the hill to watch that football game. It is like that. And even when the Wranglers go to Tucson, there's a good contingent of Wranglers fans that go down there. And when Tucson comes up in a couple of weeks as a part of our 3-game homestand, there'll be some Sugar Skulls fans that come up the hill from Tucson to watch that game. So that is just basically what this 3-team Arizona rivalry is about, because all of our fan bases know how important each one of these football games are on the schedule when we know that we have to play Tucson or we have to play the Rattlers and vice versa. They know how important those games are.
Yeah, and it kind of feels that way just from the fan perspective, because that first year for Tucson, Rattlers swept them. I think the first year for the Wranglers, Rattlers also swept them. So it never really felt too much like it was starting to really brew as that ASU U of A type rivalry until you get this first win.
Yep.
And especially that playoff win, like that stung from my perspective. And like, even though I do like the Wranglers, that stung my perspective, and I'm like, this has to be a pretty fun rivalry.
Oh yeah, as you mentioned, it's never a rivalry until you win it. Maybe you even the season series or you overtake the season series. But if it's like, say you play 6 games against a football team and you lose 5 of them, that's not a rivalry. If it's 3-3, it's a rivalry because it's evenly split as far as the football teams in wins and losses are concerned. But if it's all lopsided, where it's maybe you're 6-0 against a football team, is that a rivalry? No.
Yeah, because it's the one quote that was brought up from a ASU women's hockey player named Sam Murphy, that GCU kind of sees ASU as a rival, but it's not really reciprocated vice versa. That's kind of the perfect example. And it's not meant to throw shade. It's not meant to be disrespectful, but it has to be even, like pretty even,
yes,
intense in order for it to be a rivalry. Now,
yes, it at the end of the day, it comes down to wins and losses, and who wins the most in the season series is usually the one that can hold bragging rights on a rivalry and say it's not a rivalry or it is.
I just want to switch gears to focus on the Northern Arizona Wranglers for a little bit. What are some of the keys? Because they dropped to 4-4, they're back to 500. I don't expect them to be 500 for very long with how talented that offense and defense are. What are the main keys for the second half of this season, and how big of a playoff implication was this most recent game?
Oh, it was big. And for the second half of the season, it starts in San Diego on Sunday against the Strike Force. They've got to be able to get off that schneid. They're on a 3-game losing streak, never done it in the 2 seasons under Les Moss. So they've got to go back to the drawing board, get back to the film study, get back to the practices before they head to San Diego. They've got to realize that they can't afford to lose one more game, Matthew. They can't lose 4 straight and then continue to stay in this playoff race. They've got to beat San Diego, because you know what's coming up after that? A 3-game homestand, and all 3 of those games are hard. You've got Frisco coming in. You've got Tucson coming in. You've got Massachusetts coming in. Massachusetts beat Frisco last night. These are 3 outstanding football teams that are coming in this 3-game homestand. So you've got to stack these wins before that final game down at Footprint Center on July 15th against the Arizona Rattlers, which I think will probably have some playoff implications in it. So it's basically stack wins. Have an amnesia type attitude. Yes, you lost to the Rattlers. You lost by 1 point, and it hurts. It stung. I talked to Theo Majette after the game. I talked to Garrett Kettle after the game. Those guys were distraught. They were upset that they did not win that football game last night. That's how much it meant to them, Matthew, that they were not able to beat the Rattlers. They came 1 point short. That's how much it means to them. So go out, play good football against San Diego, play good offensive football like they're capable of doing. You score 62 points. That's a pretty good offense.
Yeah.
And the defense gets back to being the killer defense that we all know that they are under Jason Simpson. Do that, play solid special teams, force turnovers, don't turn the football over, start off strong, start off fast, and end the game fast. And hopefully you should have a good victory come next Sunday against San Diego.
Yeah, and they already have some of the tools. Obviously, you brought up Theo Majette, former Rattler, who recorded the first sack of the game. That was a pretty big play. There was a forced fumble on Drew Powell. You had that turnover on special teams on the onside kick. They seem to have a knack for being able to get that football back in their hands and making sure to stay in games. That was just I can't give enough compliments just the fight there, because there's 40 seconds left and it's your 8-point deficit. And they managed to crawl their way right back into it.
Yes, and then double overtime. It was crazy. It's like, and I said at the start of the fourth quarter, I was like, James, we got 15 minutes left in this game. I have a feeling we may play some extra football, but I didn't think it'd be 2 overtimes of extra football. But that's Wranglers Rattlers. That is a phenomenal football game. And then going back to Drew Powell, he's so adept with the football. Right, Matthew? He's only thrown 2 interceptions all season. He's extremely smart with the football. He very rarely turns the football over. And when he does, you're kind of surprised, like, did Drew really do that? Did he really fumble the football away? Mm-hmm. That's just how good he is. You've got to force the issue on Drew because he's so strong. You saw, I think it was Theo Majette had him. Did you saw when he grabbed his jersey toward the end of the game? He's so strong where that didn't even affect him. He was still able to throw a touchdown with his left hand. Mm-hmm. That's how good Drew is. He is an electric football player. I love watching that kid play football.
Yeah, he really is. And I had a couple of questions about being able to get over that hump with Drew Powell, with how great he is in the regular season. Just for some context, I've only seen him fumble the ball twice. Once was at the very end of the Arena Bowl a couple of years back, and then last night. Mm-hmm. It is a very, very rare occurrence that man lets the football go. And just how different the Rattlers offense was whenever he was injured this year, it shows that you can't replace that kid. He's just too darn good.
I mean, Jorge Reyna did a good job in Drew's absence, and you also lose Braxton Haley. It took a little while for him to come back from an injury, but when you get those two that come back, there are 2 linchpins in your offense. When those 2 come back, of course, that Ferrari engine is going to get started back on offense, right? You got number 1 QB1 running that thing. You got Haley out there just playing his heart out, and you got Isaiah Houston, Jamal Miles. They have an infinite level of talent on offense for the Rattlers, and they've always had that.
Yeah, they always had a phenomenal eye for talent, and for whatever reason, they always keep themselves competitive, and that's probably why they're one of, at least in my mind, the top 2 fan bases in the state. It's got to be Suns and Rattlers, because they've managed to keep that winning pedigree. But I definitely see the Wranglers they're making their way up as far as Arizona sports fan bases go, with how loud that place. I cannot let go of the point that, again, 2,400 people doesn't sound like it would be allowed. It was ridiculous in there. I couldn't think straight sometimes.
Oh, Matthew, it sounded like a rock concert in there last night.
Yeah.
And my wife's here. She understood. She was at the game. She's like, It was a rock concert type atmosphere. It was so much fun. Unfortunately, the Wranglers came out on the losing end. But again, you got to tip your hat to the Rattlers to come into enemy territory and come out with a victory and head back down the hill with their 3rd straight victory.
Yeah, and they definitely felt like the Rattlers kind of needed that, because they had a couple of the struggles. They started off a little cold, and you had the injury period for Drew Powell, where they maintained being around 500, but it kind of feels like the second you got Powell back, the engine just started going. And that's the best time to have it, is the second half of the season, having that engine all work properly. That is what makes Arizona's the Rattlers always scary. You're sitting there thinking, okay, they were what 3-4, I think, like 2-4 at one point. Then you reel off 3 straight victories, and now you're 3-4 at one point. Then you run off 3 straight victories, and now they're clearly in the playoff hunt. As far as the Western Conference is concerned, all they have to do is just kind of hang around there, Matthew, and then you got that kid at quarterback. Oh my gosh! and you've got an excellent defense with. I mean, Dylan Winfrey played his heart out last night. He played so well. Number 15. You mentioned Devontae Merriweather, Cherry at the linebacker spot. They all played so well last night. Yeah, and even though like the sexy box scores aren't going to be there, you didn't have 3 interceptions and a bunch of sacks. You had key plays when you needed them, and it shows that as good as the offense is for the Wranglers the Rattlers defense has had a lot of improvements. And even I noticed it for the last couple of years. I've been covering the Rattlers since 2019 for my YouTube channel. Is a lot of the times they will just get torched in the secondary. And you had a couple of moments like that last night, but I felt like it wasn't nowhere near where it has been in the past, even with RCB going off all night. Like, they had no answer for him, but I feel like they actually had some decent answers for a couple other of the receiving options. They had to just kind of keep going with that game plan.
Yeah. I mean, you got Ramad Jockey Bowman, you've got Ryan Wisniewski, a young up and coming star in this league at the rookie wide receiver. He had 2 touchdowns, and you throw out Braxton Haley, Isaiah Houston, Jamal Miles. That's high level talent from a wide receiver standpoint. I mean, there's no reason no wonder why it was 63-62. These guys can play some football. They know how to run routes. Their quarterbacks are very good, Powell and Kettle. They just know how to get the football to their players, and their players know how to score.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the end of the season, because I have a feeling that both these teams are going to be in the top 3 of the conference. It's going to be a huge playoff atmosphere there. I can't wait for that personally. And Mr. Cole, I thank you so much for your time and this phenomenal football talk. I like football. I love arena football. So getting to sit here and talk some arena football with you has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. Do you want to let everyone know, kind of want to follow you on Instagram, what you do? Make sure that they know who your name is, Mr. Ed Cole.
Of course, follow me on IG at Edward Cole 301, Twitter at Ed Cole 43, on Facebook, Edward Cole. Look for me. My little picture has me at the national championship game with a headset on. So that's Edward Cole. That's me on Facebook. That's how you can find me.
All right. I thank you so much for your time, and remember to go and have a nice unfriendly rivalry whenever the Wranglers come back into town later on next month.
Yep. We'll let's talk again before July 15th, before that final game of the season.
Yes, sir. Obviously, I'll make sure to make that happen. I'll throw the schedule wide open for you.
Of course, absolutely.